about
Live
Fauci.
streaming is on.
Ooh, I think it's on. Right, here we go. We're rocking and rolling. We are the Extinctionati. This is meeting number 129. Welcome, one and all. And on this day begins the process of winning back the Malvinas to their rightful owners. Long live Argentina. Hurrah. Meanwhile, in the rest of the world, what's going on? The possible revelations about, I don't know what the revelations are even about, actually, but something or other. I assume this is the Twitter files, and the Fauci incident is to do with the fact that people may or may not have produced some sort of modified bioorganisms. Is that the right term? In a library, in a laboratory, release them accidentally or otherwise. So is that a topic? What other topics are there? Are there other topics that we want to discuss relating to the sad predicament? I commented on Nate Hagen's latest sojourn into YouTube, where he discusses with a lady who lives in Sweden the fact that overnight, more or less, the price of electricity is so high in Sweden that the majority of the population are afraid to switch on their kettle to that extent. And she talks about her household containing a granny, I believe, and the only granny's room is warm and the rest of the house is cold. So yeah, stream is working. That's good news. Nice one. So yeah, is that maybe a topic of how we're continuing to adapt? I believe our comrade DB in the United States hasn't been affected by energy bills in the way we have. I'm slightly comforted by hearing about the Swedes to find out that Britain isn't the most screwed country in the whole of Europe, if we are in Europe or not. Maybe that's a topic. How are we all getting used to just not using the heating anymore if we can't afford it? Is that a topic? So we've got Fauci and the stupid teenage man wanting to prosecute him, which I think relates to COVID. We've got the price of energy, which all of us agree that we need to stop using energy by and large as much as we can. Yeah, there's that whole conflict, I suppose, in thinking, oh, it's really good that I can't afford to heat my home anymore, because that's what I kind of have to get used to going forward. Over to you, Mr. Messi.
May I say something?
Thank you.
Start, Mr. Messi. Just something that you said about the Swedes there. Like you said, that woman, she said the only room that's heated is the granny room. You see, why don't they all live in the granny room? Why do we live in big houses where people are in separate rooms and everything? You see, it's all coming to this. Like we need to just start to get around the fire again. Everybody.
Yeah, they were putting a positive spin on it, saying that everybody's hanging out with Granny now.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at this winter solstice and the darkest week in a physical and metaphorical way, and I think some of the revelations that we are going to see even this afternoon from Twitter, the Twitter file 7, are going to be a real light in the dark, a real spark of light in the dark, and I would like to come back to that later in the conversation.
How does someone access these broadcasts, or whatever they'd be called? Where does one go to look at this thing that these conversations?
But you're right here, right now. If you follow the link that Sophie posted, no, you posted yourself, I think, to my live stream. I'm actually live streaming the things from the Twitter.
Oh, but where is the Twitter thing that you're live streaming? So when there's some American people talking,
yeah, it's like if you are a person who is full of questions and asking, where do I find this? Where do I find that? Then I'm the guy who's making it easier for you by showing you and playing the audio. That is what is going on. Because that can be difficult.
Okay.
Because that
can reveal how one listens to the audio directly.
Because that can be difficult for a lot of people. It was difficult for me. I figured it out, and then I'm showing it to people who don't know where the things are around the Twitter app, because that's a real mystery even for me.
Yeah, I've got no idea. I mean, I've blocked Musk, so I don't know if that affects it. So anyway, so in today's, so are you going to fill us in then, Messi?
I'm too busy celebrating the World Cup, so other people will have to talk at least for a while.
Are we obliged to? Are we? Yeah, because I suppose. Well, we'll see. I'll wait and see if there's any headlines then. So what does celebrating the World Cup entail? Like it's finished, isn't it? Or is that it? Am I just carrying this conversation now? That's really alarming. Because like what's going on in the collapsosphere? There's I mean, yeah, I don't really have anything to say about collapse today, apart from that. I was slightly curious, but not that curious. DB doesn't have Twitter, Facebook, or TikTok. DB, you're not missing anything.
I don't have either. I don't have Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok either.
Yeah,
so really, I'm probably deprived here. I can look at YouTube and Reddit. So.
Yeah, I mean Reddit's bad enough, but there's no comparison between like Reddit. Like I mean the TikTok thing has been so cleverly programmed to be addictive. But I just don't. I had the thing for a month or so and then uninstalled it. But yeah, so you know we're in sort of dire straits then, really, aren't we? So there's me that has I don't have any sort of collapse related topics or anything else in my mind. Then yeah, again, apart from that thing about the heating, the inflation in the US, again, that's not a topic I'm personally capable of saying very much about. My understanding in UK terms is, according to certain commentators that I find believable, is that the inflation problem, because it's been related to this sort of supply shortage, it's nothing to do, well, it's basically just going to sort of go away insofar as inflation means the sort of rising of prices. The prices have gone up, and that's it. Now they've gone up, they're probably not likely to go up a lot more. They're going to settle for a little bit. Insofar as inflation means increase of the money supply, I think it means increase of the money supply as well. I don't know. There's all this stuff. I'm not sure. Yeah, they've got the No Inflation Act. Yeah, but that was just when American government makes new laws, isn't that just they do like sort of like the new Making Sure Children Are Smiling Act, and then they sort of tack on something about banning banning gays, giving money to Nazis, and so on and so forth. Isn't that the sort of essence of American politics, where they come up with an innocuous sounding legislation, and then they just like tack stuff on? Oh, and here's 45 billion for Ukraine, while we can't pay Americans whatever money so they can eat or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, where was that? Now I've gone off on a tangent. This has got to be right. This is the worst meeting ever, when I've been left doing the talking.
Can I take it away with some bright green lights stuff?
You can. You can go for it. You were in retreat there, Messi.
I have a list of bright light sparks in the dark for this week, and last week I streamed John Zarazan, the eco-philosopher, his weekly broadcast. So I tried streaming it live, and it worked fine. And the funny thing is that he is, I think you already know, he is kind of on the gender extremist side of the debate, right? So anyway, he is attacking Derek Jensen and Lear Keith all day, every day. That is sort of his raison d'être, his reason for living or something. And he does even in that random episode that I chose to stream. And what I found is that one of the bright sides of this week or this dark month is that our group, our cult, we have chosen the right allies or the right heroes by choosing and meeting with Derek Jensen and the guys. And the way they are doing it is that first they have thought that they have made a good kind of thinking about collapse and nature and stuff. And then that has resulted in their famous Thacker Pass anti-lithium mine blockades in Nevada. And they've sort of been living on and off for a year out there in the mountains / desert. And what becomes clear, what is clarified by that is that what you do in this situation is that you join forces with the natives and you help them defend the nature that they're living in and that their forefathers are buried in and stuff, and that their children are going to hunt and fish in, against these crazy mining companies that are going to mine lithium for the green electric cars. So it's a very, very good, very correct, very appropriate kind of action to pick. And also you have Lear Keith is one of these dark green resistance people. And as you all know, she has chosen a feminist stance. And my view is this: if a woman that I know tells me that she doesn't want to share a bathroom with men, then I respect that, because I'm not a woman, and I want women to feel safe, in school and in public baths and stuff. So I just respect women to say what they think is right about sharing the wardrobe and the showers and the bathrooms. I think that's fair. So all of this is within the dark green resistance thing, and I'm thinking, because they're doing the right thing, everything becomes much more clear and easy to understand. So the big funny thing about the last Sersan Radio, Anarchy Radio episode is that from the links that he sort of mentions in the radio show, there is an attack piece from an East Coast journalist who really didn't want to come to the mountains and see the protest. So instead of sort of doing anything, she was just sitting on her ass in the office in New York or whatever, and calling around and taking telephones and stuff. And then she found out that Derek and other people in the DGR had said some things about gender that she didn't agree with, and then she started to raise hell by calling the native peoples who are part of the coalition and trying to make them break with what's his name? One of the guys who is out there on the blockade in Thacker Pass.
Max Wilbert.
Yeah, Wilbert. Yeah. So she really stirs up the pot and actually causes the news that she is going to cover. So she, I think it's a she. She's one of the so-called translated people. No, not translated. Transsexual, whatever. So she is actually one of these people. And through my life, I've lived over half a century myself. I've met one person who is of that characteristic. One person in my life. It's not been a problem. It wasn't my greatest love of my life. It wasn't even a relationship. It was just somebody I lived close to, right? And there are so few of these people. And so this journalist from the East Coast, she was actually able to write a maybe 5-page article for the environmental news desk or something. And her main focus about the fight for native rights and against the lithium mine in Thacker Pass in Nevada, her main focus was about some of the people in the blockade maybe knowing some other people in the same ecology movement who maybe were critical of transgendered people in a non-violent way, just being sort of generally negative. So what I'm trying to say here is that you have some big perspectives, like we want to save this part of the mountain for the native people and for the animals and plants and stuff living there. And also we want to do this because civilization is collapsing anyway, so we want this to survive, this area to survive through the collapse of civilization, so that it can be used by animals and plants and people after everything collapses. And then there is this journalist person who thinks everything is about her, everything is about her sex life, everything is about her feelings. So I think it's a very sort of clarifying thing. If you go out and do the things that are right in your mind, and maybe are right even in a greater scheme of things, then the small and big things become much more clarified. That your sex life, keep it to yourself, or you can talk about it, but it's a different thing from saving a vast area of nature. Those are different scale topics. I'm not explaining it well, but that's my attempt anyway.
Well, no, that's very coherent, because this thing about the trans issue is a psyop. It must be. And again, I think I'm probably on the same page as far as, like, if somebody is in this weird, well, I think it's weird, sorry, but if you're in a space where you do feel that there's some incongruence between there's your entity, or your spirit, or your personality is incongruent with your physical body, okay, we've all got our quirks and so on, and if whatever, I can't speak about this issue without being stereotypical. I don't know enough about it, but if a bloke goes, I want you to call me Loretta and I'm going to wear a dress and so on and so forth, there's no reason why society can't accommodate eccentricity and so on and so forth. And again, I don't have anything intelligent really to say more in depth about that particular quirk, but the fact that this has become the big issue that seems to be at the forefront of every conversation, the fact that this issue can sort of break any conversation, the attitude. I didn't know this about Zerzan until I saw your post about it, Messi, but I don't understand how because he's like a primitivist, isn't he? I don't understand how anybody could advocate this thing that has the implication, at least if you go the whole hog, as DB points out, you've got this stuff where you have to take drugs, and there's very serious level of what I would consider to be mutilation involved. I'm not being that coherent either. I just think it's crazy, and it is just something that's being used to attack people, again, like Derek and those sort of people who they've got very reasonable comments about the gender issue, if that's the right words. I don't know. Do we need like a medically qualified person to chip in at this point, possibly, if there are any?
Is it me you're talking about? I had to treat as patients when I was working 3 translated, like you said, Messi.
Sorry about that.
It's really because I got lost in translation with them. I was constantly being careful of not saying she, and it was just. But anyway, yeah, you're right. They had to have terrible surgery, mutilation, depending on the pharmaceutical. We're not happy, but then it's only 3, so I'm not, and in a very remote place, so it doesn't make it easy for a guy who was a rugby man, one of them, who started to dress with like a woman with a little hat and high heels and walk in the streets of a little Irish town. It was tough enough to create quite a lot of mental angst. But yeah, I'm on the same thing. I remember Hugh used to say, "Sex is a thing you do. It's not what you are. It's an ego thing again that's coming out there. Identification instead of fluidity. It's a big mess, and it's gone. It's a mixture of a psyop and a big medical op too, because medical." In terms of surgeries, private clinics who are making a lot of money on all those procedures, the hormones that are sold, plus all the checkups, all the assessments, all the risks that these people are incurring because, for example, all my the 3 transgenders I had their penis and their testicles removed, but they still had a prostate because you couldn't remove the prostate because it's attached to the urinary system, so they were still at risk of having all sorts of disease of the prostate, getting older, so they had to have the double health care that a man and a woman would have because they were taking hormones to have breasts, so they're at risk of breast cancer as well as prostate cancer. I mean, you were going into a nightmare situation, but it's entertained by the woke culture. It's a distraction. It's the same thing as we have with all these politically correct things. I think I'm very happy, as you said, Messi, that we are very close to deep green resistance because they have made it very clear. And I don't understand how an anarcho-primitivist like Zerzan could even envisage post-collapse situation that the trans issue would even happen. You could still have, as you said, you could still have or any guy dress as Mary, but he won't be able to have the surgery unless he puts his life in danger, and he certainly won't have the hormones. But that won't stop him from hopping around in a nice dress and high heels if he wants to. I don't give a damn. I mean,
I think I can try to explain the Zertan part of it, because I think as Uncle Ted says, the left side of politics is maybe over socialized. I think that's the word he uses, and I think the problem for Eugene, Oregon eco-philosopher like Zerzan is that he's basically too social. I've talked earlier about 4 different Norwegian eco-philosophers who would live high in the mountains in their tiny little cottages and reading by a headlamp while the freezing temperatures come through the walls and stuff. I think maybe that's a better place to be an eco-philosopher. I don't think you can walk around in a big city like Eugene, Oregon, and not be unfavorably influenced by all the other crazy lefties and drug culture and all kinds of stuff happening over there. So I think the problem for Zerzan and for the left in general is that they are kind of lost in a dialogue about victimhood, because every good group these days tries to point at themselves as the biggest victims in the universe, and what the leftist then does is to march for them, or to have all kinds of supporting actions for every kind of group like that. And
I mean, but there's a sort of, that's not really the left in any sense, that there is the left and right is so perverted now. And I don't think that left and right are these like irrelevant terms. I think they're very useful. But like the left in any sense, first of all, that always seems to be part of the American narrative, where like in America, if you're slightly left of Hitler, you're the left. But yeah, I don't know about this, the left. Like, what is
I'm sorry, but I'm borrowing your language here in order to communicate with people. So if my Norwegian interpretation
Oh, no,
English
it's not,
is perfect,
it's not a language
then
thing.
I
No, think
apologize.
the political narrative.
I apologize for that if that's the case. So the thing is that
Don't you have the same terminology in
you have
Norwegian?
when you have a new situation, let's say that 10 years ago, men started breaking into female locker rooms and toilets and stuff, and then the left was faced with a choice: should we support the women who are afraid, the women and girls who are afraid of these big men with their penises and stuff in the showers at the public baths and stuff, or should we support these poor big men who have chosen to dress in women's clothing, and who are telling everybody that they are women, right? So
Are these equally minor problems?
so it's a trap for the left, because they are then forced to side with the poor big men, because they are officially a very a group that is blah blah blah, who is very at risk for everything and stuff. So then the left actually forgets about women being physically weaker and women being more at risk in these situations, right? So that's a problem, because if you have non-thinking people on the left, or non-playing characters, NPCs, they will just go with the easiest thing, and then you have the big media apparatus and maybe even Soros or whatever behind it, pushing this translated agenda. So this is a problem for the left. You can call them Marxist or whatever you want. We have to use words in any case.
Though. But this isn't the left in any sense. Like people who are obsessed with whether, and I think that it's a minor issue that if there were scenarios where men pretending to be women have harassed women, surely that's part of the broader issue of men harassing women, and isn't really a trans. I mean, it might be overlapping. I don't know. Again, it's difficult because I'm not sure that I know enough about it. But I feel that, first of all, like the idea that anybody being called the left is left in the political sense that left-wing politics represent a certain type of ideology related to the ownership of the means of production. The fact that again, this is all a fucking headfuck thing. None of this has got anything to do with, and like it's sort of Jordan Peterson's wet dream of the sort of Marxist men running around with dresses on, pretending to be women and harassing women in the toilets or whatever. I don't know if that, I mean, maybe it's a real thing, maybe it's a real issue, but I can't imagine there's anything like this going on. I've never heard about any incidents about this apart from in, again, the sort of the sphere of certain people obsessed with certain issues on social media. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, this is all a game. right? And you've got these sort of clowns, and again, this is part of this billionaire idiot's purchase of Twitter, is this sort of games among the ruling classes. But yeah, the sort of left-wing, right-wing divide does describe some idea about politics in a sense of like economics and the relationship between sort of the wider society and who gets to own what and who gets to tell who what to do, and there's some really good stuff. I mean, Messi, you've sort of recommended the Fight Like an Animal thing, and that guy describes the dichotomy, or it's not a dichotomy, but he describes the difference between sort of left-wing and right-wing politics really, really well in that podcast. And where generally, the left-wing ideology, so to speak, is something to do with, a non-hierarchical society where resources are shared equally as possible, and the right-wing ideology is more about supporting hierarchy and the right to, personal ownership of stuff, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think he is correct either. But when it comes,
Well, that's just like what left and right politics
yeah,
always were,
when it
until the
comes
sort of
to
psyop
when it
kicked
comes
in
to
10, 15 years ago.
when it comes to Sears and the left, the only reason I mentioned the word left is that he as an anarchist and a deep ecologist, in my view, he shouldn't fall down on the leftist side.
Well, you were messing.
Yeah, it's totally left.
He should be more like a neutral or above the right-left divide, in my opinion. But my point when telling the story was that sadly he has chosen to go with every kind of leftist issue and to side with all kinds of victimhood clans in the American pop culture. And that's his big mistake, I think.
Yeah, but what you were referring to at the start is that you were saying the left, you were taking Uncle Ted's view of the left, which is the one I share. And it is extremely surprising that somebody like Zerzan could be caught in that, because he's totally, if you remember that chapter at the beginning of his manifesto, Uncle Ted's manifesto, where he describes the left, it ticks all the boxes of what's going on at the moment in the woke culture, and people like Zerzan seem to be falling into the trap.
Absolutely, exactly.
But this idea of woke culture is again, it's a sort of it's a game, isn't it? It's a sort of political manipulation where the woke versus anti-woke debate is just a made-up thing to make it look like there's some, there's like some rivalry where the sort of ruling class is using that as a bat to beat you over the head with relentlessly. And so you've got this like two sides of the people, the plebs, or the I don't know, the proles, or whatever you call them, like the ordinary common folk are being set up to argue against this one is woke and this one is not woke. And actually, the origin of the word woke, I think, was just a slang term that meant someone who's sort of aware of social issues. And it's the same thing with this like political correctness. Political correctness. I mean, political correctness is an idea that was sort of fundamentally all right. It's just saying try not to offend people based on superficial issues like the color of their skin or their size or their sex or whatever. And it was originally something that was introduced like I don't know, in the UK, I remember, it was sort of it was an idea to try and limit the degree to which you would use like racist language or sexist language or whatever. But obviously, as soon as any idea comes along that has an appeal in modern culture, it gets sort of twisted into something. And I think that's what's happening here. That this idea, left and right, it's been twisted into something that has become meaningless. But there are original meanings. So again, I would push back and say that what do you call, Matey from Fight Like an Animal has described the definition of left and right political point of view, at least, and you can say he hasn't described it well or whatever, but he is basically talking about the old-fashioned descriptions of a left-wing idea of, you know, more communal type of existence, and the right-wing idea of a more hierarchical existence. And that, you know, that's what that's always meant until a few years ago, when this then became this whole like shit slinging match between, you know, whoever it is, Jordan Peterson and some woolly ass liberal Democrat cunts from the American side. And again, the extent to which this is all part of American cultural or pop culture, I think you were saying. You know, like American popular culture is like the most it's just a fucking waste of time, isn't it? And not that I would say that any like British culture is not a waste of time, but like American culture has like degenerated any understanding of the world now to such sort of moronic level that really it literally is just a tool for people to try and mess with each other's heads. And I think that, you know, insofar as you've got this like class of billionaire, you know, psychopathic, narcissistic individuals, they're also part of American culture, you know, and so they're probably just as like mentally incapable of evaluating what's going in the world as any of the rest of us, I guess, apart from Derek Jensen, who seems to know what's going on but can't stop moaning all the time.
So going back to the topic of activism, I think it's interesting that I follow the Redacted YouTube channel for other reasons, and then I came over the number 106. There's been 106 attacks on the power infrastructure in America over the past 8 months. So it's not just the North Carolina one and the South Carolina after that and the Florida after that against Duke Energy. It's been 106 attacks against electrical infrastructure in America in 8 months. And I think that what is interesting about the woke translated people is that the media and the mainstream media are trying to explain it that the attack against the substation in North Carolina was in order to stop an already ongoing drag queen story hour in one of the towns that lost their electricity. But that show had already been going on for half an hour, and they continued using their smartphones as flashlights. So it went on for a full 2 hours or something. So I think if you're going to take out 3 substations in one county to sabotage a drag queen story hour, you're going to check when it starts and when it finishes, because you know if you take out 3 substations and the event still goes ahead, then that's likely not the explanation for why the power was taken down in North Carolina. So I think that's just the deep state or the media fighting their big struggle and trying to point fingers at nationalists or whatever, Christians, because you know the male. The male of pale color is the big enemy, right?
But are you saying that
it's possible that it's actually Zarazan's allies, some of the old eco terrorists who are doing this, and that they have been given free reins, because you know the censorship and the media and the criminal FBI may have chosen to look the other way, and they may have chosen to just point fingers at the right nationalists or whatever. As America is a clusterfuck of dimensions or proportions, and we have really no idea what is going on there. And another thing that I would like to just pose as a question is,
True that.
if we kind of look at these, there's been like maybe 50 attacks against the meatpacking plants in America in a year, and maybe 120 attacks against the power grid and substations and stuff. So the question then is, why does it matter who is doing it? If we kind of are looking at it as part of the collapse or sabotage or whatever, why is it important which group is doing it? And if the FBI is doing it, is that an interesting topic for discussion?
It's interesting, isn't it? Is it important? I don't know, but it's very fucking interesting. No? I mean, if the FBI is doing this, or if the FBI is, I mean, I remember the attacks on London Tube way back after 9/11 and all of that, and they traced all those blokes somehow back to, I think that they were involved in, basically all those I think we mentioned this before, but all those terrorist attacks, so-called, were all to do with people who had connections to the FBI, MI5, CIA, and all that lot, MI6 or whoever. And so every kind of violent action that you look at, it looks like there's at least a plausible connection to people within the state system provoking those attacks to happen or organizing them or whatever. And yeah, so maybe, are you saying that in the US, the people attacking the power infrastructure might be connected to the state? And if they are, and if they're not, it doesn't really matter. Is that what you're saying? It doesn't really matter. Maybe they're connected to the state or not, but the fact that it's happening is entertaining enough without us even thinking about doing it.
Well, what I found interesting after diving into this Zarazan radio show was that with all of these things going on, and I'd even posted the story about 200 people in France sabotaging a cement factory, right? It was a massive industrial sabotage action, and that was on top of everything that is going on with the same kind of sabotage in America itself. So I kind of posed the question, to my audience or whatever. Is John Zarazan going to talk about these things? Is he going to talk about North Carolina? Is he going to talk about South Carolina sabotage? And the thing is that he didn't talk about any of those things. And that kind of leads me to think that maybe he knows who is doing it. Maybe it's some of his guys. And then I came over a series of podcasts from the BBC, this from September to November this fall, which is called Burning Wild or Burn Wild. I think Burn Wild. It's about the classical Earth Liberation Front and Animal Liberation Front actions, sabotage actions, and pyrotechnic burning down stuff, basically actions from the 1990s, which is where John Zarazan is kind of, he cut his teeth doing that kind of stuff, I think.
Yeah, I remember reading all those anarcho-primitivist things. I shamefully admit that I haven't read Uncle Ted's manifesto or whatever. But again, I like Derek Jensen's shtick more than anything, even though I sort of dislike him. I know it's not really relevant. You're not supposed to connect your feelings about a person, and I don't know. I've only seen the man on video, and I intensely dislike the other lady. But I like what they say. I like their thoughts. And so I feel like I've got more of a sense of what Derek Jensen's on about. I know I've read about Zarazan, but yeah, the idea that he could give two shits about whether someone thinks they're a man or a woman, it does boggle my mind. but I don't know if it is important enough. The point you make about, is he connected to organizations who might know something and that's why he doesn't speak about it? That's very curious. It would be interesting if there are actually underground groups that aren't connected to the state doing this stuff.
I would be thinking that basically because of the vibes I'm getting from Zerzan these days, I would think that maybe how when FBI arrests you, and you get a choice between life in prison, rat on your fellow activists, or doing crazy shit for the FBI, right?
Yeah, I mean that's
basically what
you mean.
Yeah, you can be compromised. So if like today, when you have this this VEF agenda for the Great Reset, and you have all of these aging activists or whatever from the Northwest America, and you have lots of people who have been arrested after a decade or two, who are facing life in jail, and all kinds of pressure on these people, and so you could have like a big wedding type scenario where the Soros and the VEFs of the world are trying to downsize industrial civilization and cut meat consumptions and blah blah blah, and all of a sudden you get all of these attacks against meatpacking plants, all of these attacks against power substations, and maybe that's like some quote unquote crazy anarchists who are finally being allowed to go around doing all the crazy shit they dreamt about all their life, and at the same time the FBI, who is in on it, are choosing to look the other way because they're all serving the bigger agenda of making food less available, making power less available, and basically trying to collapse the thing. So that's one of the things I think we have to think about.
That's very
that's
plausible.
the theme of managed extinction, and that's how we have to look at and read through all these maneuvers that we are observing at the moment, and we have to have a lot of discernment. I think you're right.
Well, I think there's no way we can know one way or the other, but speculation is still bloody interesting. I think what Messi was saying is very, very plausible in terms of, if you're trying to, I mean, again, if I was a member of the billionaire class, I would bloody be thinking about how do I reduce the population, like just to save my own neck. Really, that's I can't imagine. And I don't know if any of you have heard like Rushkoff talking about, who's again another character I don't know really what I think about, but he talks about, I think he's written a book recently about this scenario he was in where he was invited to speak to some super rich people.
Oh yeah.
Interviewed him. Yeah, and so they interviewed him about what's going to happen when everything goes to shit, and how are we going to convince our security personnel, for example, to not to like slaughter us in our beds or whatever, or not to run off when they see the whole world collapsing around them. Like how do they motivate their security guards to stay and work for them, for currency collapses or whatever the underpinnings of civilization disappear, and the motivation for working for these people disappears? How do they sustain that? Or can they use robots instead? Or I don't know, it's worth listening to. It's very curious. And then despite Rushkoff seems to be this sort of fairly out there person on one hand, and then a sort of very mainstream liberal type at the same time, but it doesn't, so there's all this like narrative about, oh, Bill Gates is buying up all this farmland or whatever. And it's like, obviously, if you were Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or any of these, am I allowed to mention the names? If you're any one of these like, major millionaire, billionaire people, And I assume that if I know the names of these people, that there's probably some other people that I don't know their names who are as influential and powerful, if not more so. But wouldn't these people, I mean, we recognize, I think, or I suppose I shouldn't say that in some authoritative sounding way, but I think it's probably fairly likely that the people interested in this particular conversation think that you can't go on increasing the human population, and very possibly a decrease in the human population would be as somewhat of an improvement as far as the broader ecology is concerned. And some of the, again, well, I don't know, because I'm contradicting myself a little bit, but basically I think these people are fucking idiots, but you really have to be like a major idiot not to realize that the world would be a bit more likely to go on with the current ecosystem or something remaining of it if there were fewer human beings, if I'm phrasing that in a suitably sensitive way. But well, basically, my understanding is that if the entire ecosystem doesn't just go to shit and everything dies, there's the possibility going forward that there might be some surviving elements of life, and a possibility for some recovery of the existing ecosystem if human civilization stops sooner than later, and if potentially the population was smaller. So if we yes, I'm familiar with this gentleman. I quite like him, really. I can go into I'm aware of that as well. I can go into a lot of detail about Gillard. He's been quite influential to me. He's an interesting guy, and I have a sort of psychological profile on him that I made up. But anyway, I don't know where Dougal comes from though. But anyway, so what was I saying? Basically, I can't conceive that these fucking billionaires are not thinking of. It's all right. He's a narcissist. Now, Messi, I'm a bit confused now because I've suddenly been exposed to the chat now, and I'm sort of conversing with Spengler. But anyway, right. So I'll finish because I'll try not to bore everybody shitless. But I can't imagine the billionaires aren't trying to kill us off. Basically, I can't imagine they're not doing that. And so anything that happens within the broader civilization is very possibly part of that scheme, I would say. And so, yeah, because Oswald Spengler is like a commentator about the collapse of civilization and stuff, isn't it? But again, I haven't read directly, but I've heard JMG refer to him and so on. Anyway, so but that's sort of thrown me off. I'm trying to sort of follow all these threads, but yeah, no, Gillard is very interesting. I can. Yeah, that's complicated. That's really a topic I could go on quite a lot because I really understand some of his insights from personal experience, blah blah blah. But I don't know if this is of interest to everybody. Yeah, I agree, DB. They want to accelerate it and try and surf it in a way that they can. The billionaires they want the collapse to happen in a way that they are more in control of. Again, it is the idea Hugh used to talk about, the sort of managed collapse. Yeah, so maybe the attacks on American infrastructure is coming from that. I mean, yeah, the more you think about it, everything is so nuts. What do we think about this idea?
Well, psychopaths are terrorists. They've been doing this for so long that we shouldn't be surprised. It's not just now that they want us to all go. It's been going on for 200 years or more. I mean, in different civilizations too, it was the same thing. Do you know what I was thinking? I was laughing because there's nothing to do with what we're talking about or Hanukkah or anything at all. I was just thinking, when Messi was talking about the problem with the gender thing with the toilets and all that sort of rubbish, I remember when I was a kid, I visited, when I was in France, some place where there was public baths, medieval public baths. It was dated from the year 900,000, year 1000, 11th century, those that period of 100, 200 years. And those those public bathrooms, people didn't have, even in small towns, they didn't have bathrooms, but they went very often to the public bath, and they were mixed. They were totally mixed. There was no difference. Men, women were in the same thing. And actually, after a few years, or after a lot of years, it became obvious to the church that what was going on in there in terms of sex was completely mad, and they banned them. So it was the total opposite. There was no, there was, it was not the sort of Puritan view of this modern society about, oh my God, you know, we can't mix the women because they're going to, that was really, I mean, amazing. And if you want to look into that, it's so funny. But anyway, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But I was just had that on my mind. I want to say it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, why? Yeah, I'm sure in the various countries where all the toilets are mixed or whatever. I mean, I can't see why that's even such a big deal, like this toilets thing. That's the thing. That's why I sort of talk about it being Jordan Peterson's wet dream. You know, that's become this huge issue, and I think this is all. It's all the Matrix, isn't it? Even though there needs to be a better term for it by now. It's all the Matrix. And when you have the, I mean, again, this is like, I'm really sorry, because a problem is here, Spengler's like triggered my Zionism Israel thing a little bit. And so somebody might want to shut me up, because this is the kind of, I don't know what secular means. If you mean like non-religious, then I'm a non-religious person. I don't believe I've ever been religious in any sense, if that answers your question. But again, for me, that's this particular thing. But thank you. Messi's now relieved me of having to look at the chat. The reality of like having that sort of very strong narrative, and then the narrative falls apart, and you realize that narrative is made up. And then for a while, and I think this is where we got into this whole left woke fucking transgender thing, which is the narrative falls apart, right? And if you're a certain individual, and I'm very reluctant that anybody really takes credit, so I'm not sort of taking credit in any sense, but you know, again, particular to me, a Zionist narrative, I sort of accepted the Zionist narrative in some way, and I haven't been able to figure out whether there were some layers of the onion where I didn't really accept it or whatever, or whether one day, you know, I was exposed to a certain amount of information that I couldn't reject anymore. But the narrative that was a very strong sort of life and death, end of the world, fucking apocalyptic narrative that you clung on to quite strongly, that narrative I realized was just a big pack of shit, and I got rid of that narrative. And then I think what happens is, and again, I'm not saying I'm particularly clever or anything, I just happened to be the way my brain was wired at the time that happened to me. But what it makes me think about is how people who've sort of clung to or been accepting of a certain social narrative, they then let go of that narrative, and then you're in a liminal place where you might be looking for another narrative to cling on to replace the security that you got from the original narrative that you had. And I think that this tendency is being manipulated. Now, for me, I saw the narrative fall apart, and I haven't really sort of how, I don't think so. I don't think I've really adopted any other narrative. So I've basically a sort of, and maybe this is one of the reasons why that narrative fell away for me, is that I'm sort of quite ambivalent about stuff, to the extent that it's almost a form of self-harm at times, where I really can't make my mind up about things. And so I haven't really clung to any other narrative, although, you know, people might say that the environmental interest is such a thing, but I feel like it's, yeah, maybe, you know, because maybe that's it. Maybe I contradict myself there as well. Maybe I'm clinging to the environmental narrative, and Jordan Peterson contingent would say, oh yeah, you're just a eco nutcase or whatever. So maybe that's true. But if it's not true, then I remain in a space where I haven't completely embraced any particular social narrative, and that's kind of cool. But people whose narratives kind of fall apart, they might then embrace a different one. So just for instance, our mate fucking Kingsnorth, right? Who again, I don't loathe the man or anything like this. I think it's interesting, whatever. But he's sort of one of those people who's probably, and again, I'm speculating. Don't listen to me. I have no authority about what I'm speaking, but I'm guessing because he's this sort of middle class English sort of educated person of institutions who kind of experienced a collapse of the narrative of belief in Western civilization and so on and so forth, and then found himself sort of adopting a fairly radical narrative about the environment, which again I happen to believe is probably accurate, at least to some degree. But then, that narrative has sort of collapsed in something now where he's adopted like a mainstream religious perspective to go with that, and so on, as we know. And so there's somebody who's sort of vulnerable to, or who feels the need to sort of embrace some sort of social narrative. And maybe in the broader world of things,
yeah, what you're saying reminds me of that video that I mentioned before the recording by Darren Stevenson, the one he made 2 days ago. It's on the sub. And at one stage, it's quite a long video, but around the end, he starts to talk about belief systems, which is narratives, really. And he starts to say, well, you need to have several belief systems. Why do you want to have one? Why do you want to have one narrative? Why don't you just... And it's true. And that's the big problem I have with political people, with the likes of Paul Kingsnorth, the likes of a lot of what we're talking about, is that they are not on this abandoning of the persona, and they're not embracing everything that's around, and it can help to... Oh, you talk about Robert Anton Wilson. Is he saying that too?
Yes. So, well, Robert Anton Wilson was talked about sort of playing around with your, the stories that you believe, and that you can change it from one.
Yeah.
Today you're this person, tomorrow you're a different one.
Yeah. So absolutely, I really appreciated that video with DB, because that one was very inspiring, and it had a lot in it. It could nearly be the basis of a meeting topic, actually, because what he talked about, the adventure of life, a lot of the quest and the hero, etc., would really resonate with whatever we've been talking as Extinctionati over the years. Yeah, very, very much. But I strongly believe that I believe in plenty of things, and that they are completely sometimes contradictory, and that I don't care. It's how I live, and I don't have identified with any belief system, but I could dab into plenty of them, because a lot of them are beautiful. It's not the messenger, it's the message that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that too. And also, yeah, so being able to use different stories and frameworks and stuff, that's actually intelligence right there. And then also being conscious of the context. So when you walk into a situation, you can realize, oh, none of this stuff I usually use applies. And then you just sort of dump the cup out and the cup's empty so you can learn something else. And I've noticed a lot of people are totally incapable of doing that. Yeah, and then it's like the other day I was having because people in my family are all these dogmatic Christians. We were all having talks and stuff, and they were talking about God and gods and all this stuff, and I was doing my little spiel of doing a multi-dimensional spiritual thing, and you're like saying, well, the Christian God isn't real, but then you're talking about Moloch, and I'm like, I don't believe that there is some kind of afterlife that your spirit goes to. That's what I'm saying. These things are ways for us to understand forces in our physical world. That's what I was trying to tell them. And so, yeah, they think the machine is good, money is good, and I was like, no, 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 money is Moloch. And they can't see that. That's the thing. You have to kind of practice to be able to do this sort of stuff. Yeah.
Well, the creation of money is probably, at the same time, a creation of most of those monotheistic religions are kind of seem to be happening around the same time. A few
Yeah, and
years ago, 8,000-10,000 years ago, all these things happened. They're all hand in hand. The industrial system, the agriculture, everything is all hand in hand with religion, or anyway, monotheist religions. I'm not talking about shamanism and these type of things.
yeah, another thing I noticed, I'm not sure if this applies or if this thought is true, but when I looked at stuff from history, like really ancient peoples, like painting like animal spirits and gods and stuff, and then I noticed as you go through history and look at the kind of symbology they're using, it goes from like, just pure like primordial things like dragons and animal spirits and like elk and forest spirits and stuff. It goes from stuff like that to like anthropomorphized animals where they're like humans with animal heads, and then it's just when you get to civilization, it's just all humans. It's all humans as all the gods. So it's like the alien cortex takes over, and then it turns more and more narcissistic. I don't know if that's true, but that's the sort of feeling I had about it.
I think you're right when you observe the Egyptian divinities, and that would be a time of the transition with these mid-animal, half human divinities, and the shift between the bull in various Mediterranean and Asian religions to more anthropomorphic divinities too. Yes, I think it's very interesting to consider that.
Yeah, because it's like I was thinking because Darren Stevenson was talking about how modern humans are cut off from origin. Like, I have a feeling somehow that the, really ancient people, they were engaging with the animals and painting them and doing or not festivals, but, like, ceremonies and stuff because they realized that, yeah, we used to walk on 4 legs millions of years ago, the ancestors, all the animal ancestors, and all of a sudden it's, "No, humans are separate now," and then, "We've always walked upright," and then the Christians nowadays are like, humans aren't related to monkeys, so they're just totally like trying to cut us off from origin, say that Sky Daddy put us on Earth, and then when we die, we get to see Sky Daddy again. It's like, no, no, you were born from a female. I'm sorry, you have to get over that shit.
Well, maybe on the same topic as the rest of you, another bright spark in the darkest week. For me, anyway, it's Gaia, and for some of us, for me, who's been a lifelong eco activist, now for once, all we can do is deepen our love for nature and for Gaia, and kind of feel about and reflect on our place on this planet and in this existence, realizing that we as a species have messed up. We have walked the line to the end, doing all kinds of clever things, and this is what happens. And also for me, it's kind of the knowledge that that Gaia will sort us out. She will bring on the storms and the hounds of hell, and she'll just knock us off the mountain. Basically, she will clean the valleys like a glacier and leave perhaps and hopefully a much better world, more at the right size. If you think about the word world as the totality of civilization or societies, yeah, planet is sort of the natural thing, and world is the human thing. Yeah, so that's kind of where I find myself spiritually, and I think maybe the winter solstice is the one day of the year where you kind of feel the most like you are living on a planet, and planetary and solar things are sort of a big part of the day, because when it's sort of mellow or 12-hour days and stuff in the spring and the autumn, you don't kind of feel that the planet is a thing that is limiting your day or anything. So yeah, so I'm hoping we can all feel closer to Gaia on the 21st.
I mean, we can all sit around and speculate which of us she's going to take out first.
I don't think the ending of the story matters as much. Like, I love that saying where it's all it's not how the story ends, but it's about all the friends you made along the way.
Yeah, I just think it's a great space for you know for, in my case anyway, to end the struggle, and to stop fighting the inevitable things, and just deepening the understanding of what nature is, and how powerful nature is, and of course while also learning how to live in it and from it and of it. Yeah, so I think instead of wanting to be a victim, I think we should try to enjoy and flourish and live maybe even fuller as natural beings. That would be my suggestion.
Totally
Yeah.
agree with what you're saying, because you see, I think this is the big issue. This separation and this ego thing, this persona thing that's telling us that we are, we are not nature. We are not. It's constantly, and all these problems that we've been talking about since the beginning of this meeting, whether the trans issue, all these label things and all these things, I think they're completely flattened when you come back to the basics, what you're talking about, Missy. It's just that. It's just as simple as that. Do you know, I remember what you said about, you mentioned, Bob, you mentioned Rushkov. I think he's the guy who created the term Team Human. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, that's his podcast
Yeah.
and his
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing, because we haven't talked about transhumanism for a long time too.
I think we need Team Gaia, though. I'm on
Yeah,
board.
exactly. Team Gaia might even be better than Team Human.
I mean humans. Yeah, I mean
Mhm.
humans are whatever, aren't they? It's just
But I
part
think
of the whole. That's
But
all.
I think Messi is right to highlight the problem of victimhood, because that is what the media and this woke culture is thriving on, and it's a question of attitude. We can all be tempted to become victim, like we are a victim of the billionaires, we're a victim of the psychopaths, we're a victim of the energy crisis, etc., etc., etc. But this victimhood is another manifestation of the ego, another noise. And it's a very, very cozy little niche that a lot of people just end up their life adventure, basically. You just start to become a victim, and then there you are, and that defines you, and it defines your outlook on life, and it's your death. Your spiritual death. So yeah, no victims, warriors.
Yeah,
warriors, heroes,
Yeah,
whatever we are. But
yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. It's like, yeah, we're all chained in our own ways. Like with me personally, um, like we're all born to fly. We all have wings. The culture tells us we don't have wings, and then they put chains on them. And it's like, I could just say, "Oh no, I'm a victim. I can't do anything," or I could say, "No, I have wings because I feel I have wings, and I'm gonna try and fly even though I have weights on them and chains." Like, don't give a shit, what they say.
So, do you guys remember the very last video that I made together with Lord Yu last autumn? Then I used the terms Team Gaia and Team Raga, where Raga is kind of the constant conflict and the fight between the woke and the unwoke and all of this modern bullshit, and Team Gaia, of course, is the opposite, which is taking it all down. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. It's like, yeah, they can have their abstract battle, in the Matrix, but it's like the battle on the ground is where it really matters. Yeah. That reminds me, I'm reading this story about these golden eagles that are trapped in a zoo, and they're trying to plot to escape. And one of the things that the older eagle who remembers being free, she was telling the younger one who was barely put in the zoo, she said, "There's a part of you that's really insidious and clever, and it doesn't fight with talons or wings and clashes and noise. It fights silently, and it tries to convince you that the zookeepers are good." And it only wants to have no struggle and have, easy food and all that, and it will eventually destroy your thirst for freedom. And I thought that was like really insightful. It's like, yeah, I kind of think that the left is like that. They're all, they're not fighting for real freedom. They just want more food basically in the freaking zoo.
I'm looking at the stream. I kind of didn't look at it for a while, and I don't understand what's going on because you talk about World, World Cup and stuff like that. I can't really follow what's going on. There's two meetings going on now. We are talking, and then there's people. I don't know how you can do that, Messi, because you seem to be able to multitask totally.
Men are very good at multitasking. You women,
Oh,
sadly, you can't do more than one thing at once. That's very sad.
my little brain
Very
is
sad.
very focused on one thing. When I'm cooking, I'm cooking. But I'm not cooking at the moment. Yeah, so not regular soccer and Greenland. I mean, for me, the curse of that thing, that World Cup is over, and that people are going to start to be not taking their opium every day. So now they're going to fall into Christmas. So we'll see what's going to happen. The news from Ireland is that we had a near Arctic event here for a week, and in the Midlands temperatures went to -8. In the north they were even more, and country totally unprepared, chaos. Yeah. Anybody knows something about the AMOC? I mean, the Atlantic. I'm got a blank. The changes in the jet stream and the changes in the atmospheric masses that are coming to Europe at the moment. Anybody who's versed in this who could enlighten me a bit about, is this part of it, or is this just a freak event?
I'm not sure. I mean, I've been actually thinking about how the conveyor belt and all that stuff in the ocean is being affected. I do know that it looked like the jet stream in 2018 was falling apart. But I'll have to look at the science and see exactly what's going on. But I have no doubt, like, the ocean is heating up. It can't be good.
Yeah, I've just seen the temperatures on maps of North America, and it's like -40, -50, crazy temperatures. Even all the way down to the northern USA, the northern, Maine and Minnesota and whatever. So that's sort of the temperature that we have in Greenland on the top of the 3,000-meter glacier. That's where we usually have -50, and now they have it in small towns in America.
Yeah, it's getting crazy with those extreme weather events for sure. Yeah, where I'm at, it's actually not been too bad. It's not gotten below 0 Fahrenheit here, the coldest because I'm outside at night when I go to work on my bike, so I feel the cold. It's not been that bad. It's been about 15 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not too bad. I've been in way colder weather than that, so yeah, I have enough layers to put on to be relatively warm in that weather.
I remember. You can turn one of those off. You can take one of those oars off if you can. Somebody.
There might be something, the fact that there's two of you on the chat, you might have to close one of them. Yeah, your sound might get better then.
I kicked her.
Okay.
Oh, is that the same R? Two
Yeah.
R's.
It was Risa. She came in twice, but maybe she came on her phone and on the. Oh, she has. It's closed, Risa. It's closed now, so you can talk.
Thank you. Thank you. I remember this was many years ago. It was in January in New York City. And the weather forecaster said it's 20 degrees Fahrenheit and it feels like 40 degrees below zero. So I said, I've never been out in 40 degrees below zero. So I said, let me go out. So I put my midweight long underwear on, top and bottom, and I put on my warm shirt, my jeans, my warm sweater, and my down parka, and my hat, and my hood, and my gloves. And I was out for 10 minutes, and I said, I'm going back. I'm too cold. It was 40 degrees below zero with the Fahrenheit with the wind chill. So
Yeah, in that weather, if it got -40 here, I would have to put on my thermals to actually go outside. And then I'd have like 4 layers of thick I have this thick wool sweater and then some military gear that I can put on to walk around out there. But yeah, you really have to bundle up in that shit. Yeah.
Well, here what happens is that because the country here is usually mild because of the Gulf Stream, and that we hardly ever get any snow or any ice, except maybe some places in the Midlands and in the north, but they're used to it. But all the places that never get frost and ice on roads and snow and the whole lot went into chaos. They closed the schools, which was great. But things started not to function. It was quite interesting to observe, because there was the cars are not equipped for this weather because on the continent and European continent, people have got special tires and stuff like that too. But here, even the buses couldn't function. Transport, cars were sliding into the ditches. It was closed. Towns were closed. Shops were closed. Any little businesses. It was quite interesting to see, and maybe is something to learn from the future, because if the Gulf Stream is totally fucked and goes south, well, we'll get the temperature of Newfoundland here in England and in Ireland and England and Northern Europe. We won't be cooled by the Gulf Stream, and it will be another story, complete other story.
Yeah, I think the English deserve it. I hope that happens.
I think that is the absolute least possible, least credible, what they call tipping point of all the things we've heard about. I know for sure that we have multiple oceanographists from in Norway at Norwegian universities who've been saying for decades that all fears about the Gulf Stream ending are completely bogus, not going to happen in many centuries, and it's been recently confirmed. Last time I checked, I mean, so it's kind of one of these things that these mainstream media scientists come up with all the time, and
does that mean England's going to turn into the Costa del Sol?
So basically, in the worst case, in terms of not warming as much as you would think without it, it's a case of maybe England warming 1 degree in the same decade that Poland or Italy would warm 2 or 3 degrees. So it's not like it's going to be colder in England or Scotland, but it's going to get warmer more slowly, and that's just if it's going to have an effect at all, because these big ocean conveyors, they are very, very slow changed. So things that are influencing it now, they only come back to have effect on us like 50 or 100 years from now. So the effect that we will get in 2030 will be stuff that happened in 1930, right? That's
so we're neither going to be frozen solid nor sipping margaritas for 6 months of every year.
I think my best prediction is that it will be very, very foggy and very, very rainy in Britain.
Oh fuck, that's not good.
Thank you for
Like
answering
always.
that question, because that would change absolutely nothing for England. But for thank you for answering that question, because I'm not very knowledgeable in those Atlantic currents and stuff, and I'm trying to learn about them, but I haven't found the right place to study that. So what we're seeing now will be just what has been predicted is an increase in extreme weathers now and again, but not a trend going to. You said that would be a very slow process anyway if there was displacement of big Atlantic currents. Is that what you're saying, Messi?
Yeah, I'm not an expert, obviously, but my feeling is sort of that because you have German scientists also touting this. My feeling is that every time you see this in the Daily Mail or the Daily Mirror or whatever, it's kind of a stand-in for pure climate denial stuff. Because every time a regular reader in the UK looks at stuff about the Gulf Stream ending and Britain getting colder, there we go. See, that's what I've been saying for 40 years. We're going to go into another ice age. So this is kind of a dog whistle, I think. Actually, a dog whistle for climate denial.
Yeah, I've heard some climate deniers just sticking to the weather, not understanding all these things and saying, "Yeah, you see." No, but what I'd like to. I didn't know what you were saying about the slowness of the changes there, and I'm going to. If ever you have some good places where I can go and look at that, because Beckwith doesn't address that very much. He talks about all sorts of things, but he doesn't talk much about the ocean. Funny enough, well, this part of the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean anyway. He might have talked a little bit more about the Pacific. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he does go into the Gulf Stream sometimes, but he calls it the AMOC or whatever. So maybe you have to just search for AMOC. I think, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say anything bad about Beckwith, but sometimes he is too close to some mainstream narratives. Let's just put it that way.
Wasn't he a bit about those geoengineering things that made him?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I mean. He's still, our perspective in this group is very, very special and very good. I feel too many Beckwith and absolutely too many people on the climate Twitter or wherever are still fighting to save civilization, and it's a huge split in the ecology/climate movement, that all the mainstreamy people or activists, they are still trying to save McDonald's and Target and Marks and Spencers. That's sort of their fight, and the deep green people on our side, they're more like, yeah, I really like forests and valleys and creeks with salmon and trout and stuff. So it's incredible that the eco movement has gone in the direction of trying to save industrial civilization.
Yeah, it's crazy too. And then some people, like part of the argument I was having with family went from religion to climate change, and they were citing stuff where they said, "Oh, some ice increased, and then oh, the sea level's not going to rise." And I'm like, "You guys are missing the point." Like this year, for instance, I've noticed that so usually the leaves here on the trees in autumn fall off in October. They didn't fall off till after the first week of December this year. All the leaves of the trees around where I live. And then not only that, but people around me are totally dead to the fact that in the area I live in, there used to be monarch butterflies around here when I was a child everywhere. And I haven't seen one in 10 years. So people are not noticing what's going on in the world of life. They're just sort of stuck in the marketized fantasy of this economic system. Yeah.
Yeah, well, don't forget that a majority of the human population is urbanized and is not in contact with the natural world anymore, so they wouldn't notice all these things. It's only because you go out and I go out and I see the insects disappearing, and the leaves on the trees here, they lasting much longer, second growth and things like that happened in November, and late fruit and stuff like that. But you see, there's a dwindling population in the northern hemisphere anyway. That's outdoor. People might notice it more, and the poor things in Pakistan and the Middle East and the Sudan and all these areas will notice it because they can see the desert coming into their kitchen. But you won't find people talking about that. If you sometimes I see some blank faces when I say, "Oh, did you see there's still leaves on the trees?" And people are like, "What's she on about?" Like, what it's just like, even in the country, well, apart from my neighbors, like, because they will notice things like that. But if I talk to what we call townies, they don't know. They don't care, or they don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that I need to find this. So at work I have the ability to listen to stuff on YouTube because I'm all alone in a building at night cleaning. So I'm able to do that. One of the talks I listened to about Darren Stevenson, he brought up the fact of he brought up like the history of like people in cities and then hunter gatherers, and he said that basically the people in cities can't be trusted because they're cut off from origin of life and all that their priorities are completely skewed. Yeah, and I felt that was pretty profound because if you look around and then you know, as you say, talk to the townies. It's just the priorities are completely different, completely different. And I'm in an urban area. I'm a townie basically, but it's like, you know, I can't really get out of here. I'm freaking poor, so I'm kind of stuck here. But um, yeah, I still notice. I try to pay attention to the trees and then whatever animals that can live here, which is a freaking miracle. I pay attention to them too, as best I can.
That's interesting. I find myself paying more attention to the wildlife, as you know, because as anyone may be aware or not, that I've been talking about this topic of how we urban types sort of connect with nature a bit more. And yeah, I find that I'm gravitating towards the sort of various birds and squirrels and shit. And that's, yeah, I'm just starting to notice things very slowly.
Yeah, in November, I actually got really close to a squirrel. I was out in the front yard playing with my dog, and I walked past a tree, and the squirrel was like right in my face. We were like only like a couple feet away from each other, and we sort of stared at each other for a bit. And then I took one step, and then the squirrel went around the tree and then leaped on the fence and ran away. I'm like, I don't blame you, buddy.
Yeah, I had a
Yeah.
squirrel today who was very close and didn't seem to be bothered by my presence. And I was thinking, how easy would it be to catch and eat you?
Yeah, and then I see crows, but the thing is I've walked around at the park. I really want to make friends with some crows, but I don't think any of the crows have any permanent residence here. I think they're sort of migrating around, being nomadic, but yeah, I've seen crows, but yeah, sometimes at the park there's absolutely none. Sometimes there is a group of them or a few groups of them. But yeah, that's disappointing that there's no residence of crows, but I see ducks a lot and squirrels, and then finches during the spring.
Here, every winter, no, well, from November on, we have some wild geese that arrive in the bay from the Arctic. They're called Brent geese, and they're beautiful. And they come in flocks. There are 30, 40 of them. And this year, they haven't arrived yet. And I don't know why. They stop on the way I think they stop on the way on the east coast of England sometimes before they come here, but otherwise they cross directly down from the Arctic, and they're not there. I look every day on the beach and the bay, and they're not there. First year that I haven't seen them so late.
Yeah, that's yeah, paying attention to the birds is huge because I'm pretty sure all birds, if not most of them, have like an internal compass. They are very sensitive to the Earth's magnetic field. So, yeah, it's good to pay attention to that. And then they're very attuned to the seasons as well. So, watching what birds do is pretty important and trying to figure out, you know, what they're communicating with their migrations and their behavior. Yeah, that's like one of the adventures is like um you know, people living in cities who want to survive are going to have to learn how to take cues from the living world and learn what the animals are saying and what the trees and the grass and the rivers are saying. And that's going to be hard. It's going to be like, you know, transforming back into a baby again and then learning how to walk. It's going to be really freaking hard, but it's going to have to be done if people want to live.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's certainly true. I think that when you are a country person, you don't even know that you're doing it because you're taking those cues every day as you wake up and as the light starts and the smells and the type of the air and the color of the sky and the sea and the grass, and you don't think about it. And when you're going to have to learn that language like a child if you haven't been in it for a long time, if you haven't been exposed to it as a child, So yes, it's and I think that there's some cities, some towns that can provide some places for that, and there are parks. Actually, that man that you're mentioning, Darren Stevenson, he's an urbanite, but he seems to be spending every day in parks, and the little bit of nature he has, he's connecting with it and he's learning from it. So it's not impossible.
Yeah, my view on that is it's better to try it than to just sit in the cage even if the door swings open. It's better to at least give the attempt to fly rather than just say, "Oh no, I can't have my sugar cube. Life has no meaning." Like I find that, really bad, but being like, "Oh shit, the cage door is open. Fuck, I'm out of here. Bye."
There's a parallel conversation going on on the stream, and I'm just looking at it, and I don't even know what they're talking about. Oh yes, because it's in the US, so I wouldn't understand much about what's going on there. Yeah. So you're saying that there was more snow in Norway than in Greenland this Christmas? Wow, I've seen that in the comments too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's total chaos down in southern Norway and even in northern Norway. Cars on the highways getting stuck in the snow and everything. Yeah. So, and I actually saw a very interesting, weather map, or half the planets, the Arctic and below areas, and I'm not sure how long it persisted, but just for that map, it was an anomaly map. So you see the temperature deviations from normal, and on that map, the entire Arctic Ocean area was red because it was warmer than normal. And then everything from Vladivostok to Moscow to Germany and Scandinavia and Britain and Canada was dark blue because it was colder than average. And so that's kind of a new trend, or a new kind of normal, that you have the Arctic Ocean as a kind of decider, that's influencing everything. So when the cold is not sort of locked over the Arctic Ocean as it usually is, with sea ice and then a big heavy high pressure system over that, when that is disrupted, so that you have more and more open ocean and more low pressure systems going on there even in winter, then that sort of displaces, in my mind anyway, it sort of displaces all the coldest air on the planet away from the Arctic Ocean area, and then of course it goes down to the subarctic and to the temperate zones. So that's kind of the way I interpret it, but I'm not an expert. But that's maybe I could start collecting daily images of that, and looking to see if there's a pattern, and then I can maybe present it on here someday. So that this is just a one-day observation, really, and I'm not sure that it persists for very long, but it seems to be a pattern that the cold air is displaced from where it usually is.
Well, the pattern too, the last couple of years is also of extreme weather events everywhere, really, even in temperate latitudes. So that is definitely something to be sure of. Is that, you know, you can be sure that there's going to be change and extreme events, unpredictable. You know. But thankfully now we're back in Ireland to the southwest winds, force 7, lashing rain, high seas, and big winds everywhere. Definitely, you can't hear because I'm a bit away from the window, but it's back to the usual here, the usual winter of storms.
Oh, you know, when you said patterns, it made me think of so I was always wondering about this pattern that's always seen in nature. I notice it too. And I've seen it well in dreams and stuff. And I looked it up, so it's like the same pattern. Like it's a pattern that rivers take, like rivers, trees, blood veins, neural connections, all that sort of stuff.
The
I've
mycelia
looked
too, and the mycelia. If you
yeah,
look,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the fungi,
Mhm.
yeah, and I looked it up and it took me a while because it's hard to find the words. It's called a river fractal. I didn't know that. That's incredible.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, so they called that a river fractal. So the trees, all that pattern, that kind of snaking vein pattern is called a river fractal. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. Yeah, I wonder if it probably does. I've seen a zoomed out like either simulated or photo of the universe, they show it and it looks like all these clusters of galaxies are connected in the same kind of pattern. It's really crazy. Yeah, really crazy, but really awesome.
Yes, I've seen some images like that, and yeah, it really reminds you of all these fractal animations that you've seen before, but within nature. Um, I've noticed very because I look at the ground a lot when I'm walking because I'm always afraid I'm going to fall in a ditch or slip in the mud or something. So I notice a lot the patterns of the mycelia in the winter because the grass is not too high and you can see lines of funny mushrooms that are connecting like a network of yeah of blood, a blood system or something running and sometimes appearing above the grass and sometimes you imagine it's underground. It's fascinating, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It had me pondering on like the characteristics of order and chaos and maybe in nature uh the it's more they're in harmony rather than the sort of artificial order that that collectively civilization is obsessed with by turning everything into crystalline pattern. There's this like organic pattern that seems sort of harmonious. I don't know how to explain it. But yeah, it's sort of a feeling I had. I'm not sure.
No, I get what you're saying. I've been pondering that too. Yeah, I've been noticing that as well. It doesn't have to, don't have to know what to make of it. So you notice it. Was it the fractal the fractal structure of the universe, so the fractal structure of everything is hitting me every time I turn into something I want to study. It always comes back to that. Always.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure because they've made in the evolutionary science, they made the evolutionary tree of life, and it's the same fractal pattern when they drew it in the diagram. It's the same fractal pattern. So it's like all of
Yes.
us collectively as a living thing are this fractal pattern playing out through time. It is profound.
Yes, it was that very interesting new tree of life, which is yes, like a fractal structure, which doesn't at all look like the one that we've been taught in school, but it's more like a Mandelbrot thing that just you can zoom into it. You remember? I don't know if you remember. I think Hugh sent it to us or put it on a meeting for us or something.
Yeah, he did. He showed us that. Yeah. I knew a little bit about it before though because I was in college for environmental science. I dropped out because A, finances, and B, I realized that, being an environmental scientist isn't necessarily a good thing because they do wildlife management and stuff, and that's disagreements there. But anyways, yeah, it's really profound. It's like maybe a lot of the past spiritual or religious things before civilization were sort of gesturing towards that sort of recognition of the giant, infinite pattern that we're all a part of playing throughout time. It just makes the priorities of this culture look so freaking petty.
So, are you guys ready for another spark of light in the darkest week from my little list?
Sure.
Yeah. So the final one for tonight, anyway, is going to be about the concept of doomerism or doomers, and I'm not sure all of you agree, but I think I already outlined it in previous weeks that my own position, anyway, is that I'm actually not a doomer. I've been a doomer, definitely, and I have lots of sympathy and empathy and understanding for and with other doomers. But my position is that all is not lost. I think maybe part of the concept of a doomer is that you think that you unconsciously believe that civilization is everything, or human culture is everything, and then forgetting about the 99% of human life on this planet historically, which was not civilized. Can somebody mute themselves, please? I think I can try to mute. Yeah, that was Sophie. Yeah, so not being a doomer anymore, being beyond doomer in a way, because I actually see that the dooming of the one thing, the dooming of the civilization, is the salvation of the natural planet. So that makes me an optimist in scare quotes. It makes me an optimist for nature. So in fact, the very thing that makes doomers doomers is the thing that gives hope for the green Earth and the living planet and Gaia surviving and making it through on the other side. So that's my final bright spark of light for this solstice season. And yeah, you're free to ask questions or whatever if that is a messy way of explaining it.
Oh no, I think that's good. That's been my position all along. I put on my doomer cap when if I'm talking to a person that's just their whole world is just human culture, then I put on my doomer cap and I try to crush their dreams because that view, that mind prison has no future. So that's why I do that. Other than that, um, this thing collapsing, it's just all the cells, all the prison cells collapsing, and then that gives us and the universe the opportunity to create something better together without the this obsession with authority and predictability and clockwork machines and all that other death death bullshit. We can create something that, you know, gives life the ability to actually breathe and become what it's going to become.
Yeah, I think the same. Sorry for the noise earlier. I didn't realize my microphone was on. I was putting away a plate. But I see that the same way as you, Messi, because it's a definition of doomer. If it depends on what you see as doom. What is doom? And if for you, for me, what is doom is the destruction of animal and insect species, and the destruction of rivers and water and sea and animals, and that makes me a doomer in a way. But I'm certainly not a doomer when I look at the collapse of civilization. That's something to celebrate. And as you say, DB, it's only when you're with people who are clinging on to this fantasy that I could say that I'm a doomer, but otherwise I'm not. And I would like to highlight the fact that and to show them, you know, the signs that this is happening. Yes, but other than that, absolutely, I agree with your spark of light in this dark time of year. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm clinging to the fucking Doomer label.
I'm not surprised.
It's snappy. We're all going to the camps. It's only a matter of time. It'll only be Elon left eating a steak.
But you have the letter B. You should be a boomer.
Oh, I'm not a boomer. I'm too young.
I'm a boomer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think things are gonna end well for the billionaires. Remember when Rome was collapsing? Like I'm like, obviously I wasn't there, so I don't know, but in the histories they said they were going through emperors like every week. I have feeling some people are gonna start getting pissed off and start knocking those guys off. I mean, it's kind of a religious thing in America where you just worship billionaires, and then if they're naughty, you just like slap them on the wrist, like what they're doing to Trump currently. But I'm pretty sure, you know, maybe some of the security forces or whatever will just get so fucking tired of it, they'll just start taking them out, maybe. Because America really is kind of like Rome, right? Like they've got the same kind of property laws in the Constitution. So who knows if their people's worldview starts shattering because of this collapse, we might start going through Roman emperors like crazy again.
Can I ask about Greece? Because I recently thought about it. Something I heard many decades ago, that you know, these philosophers that we've heard about from ancient Greece, they lived in what we can call a pretty high culture, and then there was a huge collapse. Is that right? Anybody got that fresh in memory? That between the time of Aristotle and modern Greece, there was a huge cultural collapse.
Well, it was partly due to plenty of other factors, just not just the Greek civilization itself. There was wars, there was invasions, there was epidemics rather, for Greece, extremely vicious wars. So yeah, there is a dark period of Greece that came after the pinnacle of Greece, that was parallel with the rise of Constantinople and Byzantine and all that. So it went spanned over hundreds of years. It was not entirely generated, but the Greek civilization started to show cracks when it started to expand, but it didn't expand as much as other empires like Rome, or even the British, or the big conqueror, and the Spanish, etc. So I don't know if you could really compare it. I mean, if you could use it as an example of collapse. I don't know. I'm not knowledgeable enough to talk about that, but that's just a little bit I know.
No, but it was a huge, what do you call it, simplification. You went from something advanced into a much simpler or less. I can't
Yeah,
remember the word.
funny enough, the later philosophers and the later thinkers of Greece were preaching a more simple approach and a more natural life. And you know, it was not you didn't have this this philosophy that you, and actually, if you know the Greek, a lot of it has remained. It's not something, you see, it depends how you think of a civilization. If it's something that's supposed to become destructive and to destroy everything, it will self implode. I don't know if the Greek civilization had these seeds in it. It's a bit of a difficult subject to talk about at the end of a meeting, but yeah. But anyway, it's you were saying more in terms of philosophers and thinkers. Is that what you were saying?
No, basically in terms of collapse being going from a structured, hierarchical, advanced society and into a much simpler and less stratified society.
Yeah,
Not through choice, but because you are forced into that kind of collapse. Yeah.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why, like, if someone were to ask me what I think future people would be living like, I can't really give a definitive answer because necessity will determine that. So whatever way people can figure out how to live in relative harmony with their habitat is going to determine what their lives are going to look like.
Yes, and ironically, people who campaign for equal pay and equal rights and everything, what they really should be doing is root for a collapse, total system collapse, because after society, everybody will be equally fucked. Was my sentence.
Yeah, that's the hard part, but there is things to look forward to. Like, I absolutely despise the how everything is commodified. And that, Freddie Perlman and Ahel talked about this, how civilization isn't a real human culture. It's because we have no fucking relationships, really. It's all intermediated by ideologies and, money, the freaking Moloch money, commodities, distractions, media. All this crap is like in our way. And things going more simple and all of that going away, I think would be fantastic. Cuts the bullshit right there, and then all that's left is people and life, basically.
Bob, do you want to comment before you split?
No, I'm lost for words for a change.
I agree with Bob when he said that the world's overpopulated. It doesn't help anything.
I agree with R.
Okay. And then last week, I think it's either Going South or Bob, they posted an article about fake terror plots. And I read it, and they just like to they target the poor people. They don't care about the poor people. So it's been going on for centuries. It's sad. Nobody's better than anybody else. Just because you're poor doesn't make you less than a person than someone who has money. So
Absolutely, I would say the other way around. If you're poor, you're most likely a good spirit or a fighter or an artist or something. So yeah.
Yeah, and then another thing we have to keep in mind is that situation of a rich person, a poor person, that was created with guns, violence, lies, control, all that crap. So Yeah, it wasn't that was not a force of nature. That was some contrived evil from the worst part of human psyche.
Okay, so I hope that we all at the same time on Wednesday have the chance of being outside or doing something meaningful for each of us, and that we can then maybe share it if possible on the sub, like we said. I will be definitely there. I think it's here. It's 21:48 UTC. So we'll see what happens.
Yep, I'll be there for sure too, especially since it's the afternoon where I'm at.
I'll
It's
be
kind of
there.
perfect.
Cool. That's great. That's great.
Are you're holding a meeting on Wednesday too?
No, Risa, we're celebrating the solstice.
Solstice, okay.
Yeah, and we're going to do a bit like last year, have a little ceremony, ritual, whatever you call it, each of us in our place, and then post whatever we want on the sub, and try to hold, well, to do something anyway meaningful at the same time, so that we'll all be doing it as a egregore.
Is this it? Is this the end, Bob?
Oh well, as I was saying, I might need to go anyway, so it's all right with me if we wind things up. If everybody's,
Can you do the thing?
I can do the thing. I'm becoming an expert in silence. I'm practicing silence very regularly now. So it looks like the meeting of the 18th of December, as we sort of hurtle towards the end of 2022, another fucking weird year, getting weirder each time, heading towards 23. And now we come to the end of this meeting, which had a lot of a good mixture of topics, a good mixture of discussion, debate, and just general bants, I guess. And so now we're all going to just pause to reflect. We can digest a little bit what's happened, but then we're going to let it move through our system and shit it out at the other end and leave it to fertilize the ground. We're not going to cling to it. We're going to let it all go. And with that in mind, and with some gratitude for the participation of everybody who's involved in this meeting actively and or passively, and you can't be and or passively, can you? Actively or passively. Let's pause for a moment's silence and let it all go. May Gaia do as she wills.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye now.
Bye, everyone.
Take
Thank
care.
you all. Stay safe out
Thank
there.
you. Have a nice week.